So Seth certainly got us thinking in a deep way. Is it possible to take the best of what we have mined in our discussions and spread it very widely into publicly funded spaces? Is it possible to change culture by bringing the best of what we've found in universal spiritual development, places of meeting? Think of the 5 phenotypes of spirituality: interconnectedness, love, altruism, a practice of connection, shared values. Right? I pledge allegiance to democracy. Right? So can we take the 5 phenotypes and usher them into publicly funded spaces? And what else might be mined from our world's great faith traditions? So now I am very, very grateful to introduce 3 very deep thinking, religious, spiritual activists who are going to share practices and understandings that I invite us to take in and understand as universally human, universally part of the spiritual path. So I invite you to listen with the thought of service and universal contribution. Thank you. Okay, first let me introduce everybody. We have Reverend Stephanie Taylor, Rabbi Shaul Pavner. And would you explain, Ms. Martinez, about how the Baha'i faith does this? I want you to say it in your own words.
Oh, there is no clergy in the Baha'i faith, so I'm just a person who is a Baha'i. But I've had many experiences with the educational programs that the Baha'is offer and open to everyone. So I'm not speaking on behalf of the Baha'i community. I am just an individual sharing my experiences and what I understand and insights coming from a Baha'i perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Reverend Stephanie Taylor, come on up.
I'm a Southern girl, so you can take a deep breath. I'm not going to speak as fast as him. And being a Southern girl, I'm going to start with a story of going to see Billy Graham when I was 15, like
but they didn't experience it. It wasn't their authentic
we
voice.
were packed into the Panther Stadium
because
we also like
football. But they can't say, when I was in college, this is what
listening to him
happened.
talk, and he stopped in the middle of his talk and said, I want to introduce you, not introduce you, but I want you to know about the most essential person in the room, and it's not me, and it's not you, but there is a man right now underneath me, underneath this stage where I am standing, who is praying for me and praying for you during this whole talk. And it had such a profound impact on me. I thought, I want to do that for a living. Like, how do you get to be that person? So 17 years later, people ask me what I do. That's what I do. I am the person underneath the stage praying for everybody. So I'm a school chaplain. And I always tell people that my job is to soak the walls in prayer and to help other people do the same thing. Because in the Episcopal Church, we're Episcopal school, sorry. In the Episcopal Church, we feel like we have not cornered the market on truth. And when I explain this to the kids, it's the story of the elephant. If the Episcopal Church was the trunk and the Muslim faith was the foot and the Jewish faith was the tail, if you just had the trunk, you would have no idea what an elephant looked like, right? So the best way to understand God is if we all do it together. And so for us in the Episcopal Church, it's essential then that we do it together. And so my job is to help students explore, help faculty explore, help the parents explore. And the ultimate goal is that everyone can be self-actualized in front of God and in front of their peers, which takes a lot of courage. So how do I do that? It sounds, a lot of times people say, Episcopalians believe in nothing then. We're just floating out there. And I would say that's not true. We have some ways that we're grounded through ritual, and I'll talk about some ways that I provide an anchor, but also that I help other people in the school provide their own anchor. But I also help them explore. How do you find God? And so I thought that today I would run you through an exercise that I do with my middle school kids, and I'm going to invite you to meditate with me. So if you will get in a comfortable position with your feet on the floor so that you're grounded. And if you are in, is it Everett Hall where we ate lunch? If you are in Everett Hall watching, I have asked somebody to stand in there and watch so that you can comfortably close your eyes as well. You in here, feel free to close your eyes because my eyes will be open, so you will be safe. So go ahead and get in a comfortable position. Go ahead and close your eyes and begin to breathe deeply in through your nose, out through your mouth. In our world, our breath gets shortened naturally. It doesn't ever make it past our lungs to our stomachs. So go ahead and breathe all the way into your stomach. This is not the time to suck in. And I want you to breathe in warm, golden light, and breathe out any worry, any pain, any anxiety. Breathe in warm, golden light. Breathe out any worry, pain, or anxiety. And allow your body's natural breath to return long and full, life-giving. And when you're ready, go ahead and imagine a staircase. And you can begin climbing up the staircase. It's dark, but you're safe, and you're not worried. And there is light at the top, and as you get closer and closer, it gets brighter and brighter. Continue to walk. And when you get to the top, there's a doorway, and I invite you to go through the doorway, and you are going to be greeted by a bird, a big bird. And so take a few minutes to look around you. What does the bird look like? Feel the bird's feathers. This bird is going to bend down so that you can climb on its back. You are completely safe, but hold on because the bird is taking off, and you're flying with the bird. Feel the wind go past your face. The air is cool, but not cold. You are refreshed. And as you get higher and higher, you can see the world below you. And I'd like for you to take a minute to look down. And I wonder what you see. Do you see more good in the world, or do you see more darkness? Continuing to fly on your bird, I invite you to stand up. And do not be afraid, because the bird has shown you how to do it now, so he's going to leave and you're going to fly. And take a few minutes to play. It is fun to fly. And as you're flying around, this warm golden light has returned to you and is wrapping itself around you. And you are reminded that you are beloved, that you are loved, that you are known to the Creator. And this light curls up around your ear and whispers something to you. It then encircles you again to remind you that you are never alone. And with that light, you are safe enough to come down to the ground. You can go back through the door and back down the stairs. And when you get to the bottom, you can begin to wiggle your fingers and your toes and come back to your body. And you can open your eyes. So I'll ask you the same as I ask my students. If you would like to share anything that came up for you, please feel free. Anyone wants to share about their vision of the world, or if you'd like to share about a message you got? Yes?
I just thought it was interesting that the staircase that I pictured was in my mother's house when I traveled. When I was flying, it was over my childhood neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yes?
I was seeing the beautiful earth like we see from the aeroplane. I was seeing the beauty of the earth, the natural gardens, mountains, ice, snow-covered mountains.
Yeah, thank you. Any last thoughts? Yeah.
When I looked down, I saw both the good and evil in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't see kind of clarity with darkness and also lightness.
Was it equal? Was it equal?
I think about that. No, I would say no. There's probably more light than dark, but there was definitely darkness.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes?
When you mentioned the light that was put in here, to me it looked like it said something reassuring.
Wonderful. That's the message.
Right.
Yeah, the divine has shown up. To set that up, I invited God to be with us. I asked God to make the space between here and Everett Hall holy. And so I hope that you felt some of that. My kids, I call them my kids, I shouldn't do that. My middle schoolers, I told them I was coming here, and they created that for you. That was a world they created for you. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I generally create them. And I am very careful not to give them an image of God. I usually will say something like warm golden light. Often I will say a bird or an animal. And they then tell me who God is and how their relationship is. And some of them don't use that language at all, and that's okay. But I get some fascinating responses from them. One kid told me once, you know, when you asked us to breathe in that warm golden light, well, when that thing that you asked to come to me in the woods came, it was like a stick figure made out of that warm golden light that was in my body, which I thought, that's pretty fascinating. A few of my 7th grade boys once reported that after they had come into contact with the warm golden light and then walked back down the staircase had changed, which I thought was very fascinating. They said it was, just a regular old wooden staircase or something like that, and they came back down and it was grand, which says to me that they did indeed come into contact with the divine, and the divine reimagined the world for them. So this is the type of language and activity that I do on a regular basis in our school, to encourage them to figure out who God is for them, what God has to say to them. And I use the word God because I'm a priest. But we also say divine. I encourage them to use whatever word they want. Some of them, it's very much a higher self, a higher power, and that's okay. But we make space for that. And it's also a tool that I use for conflict management in my pastoral care. So I had a girl come to me. Some of the boys had told her that nobody likes her. And so I led her through a meditation and asked her to get a message. And her message was that everything's going to be okay. So it's a tool that I use. That being said, I also need to ground them in something because they are just learning. I, as a seminary student, was a little disillusioned with the church at one point. I didn't like the way that my gay, lesbian, transgender brothers and sisters were being treated. I didn't like the way women were being treated. I got really disillusioned, and I called up my bishop, and I said, I'm sorry, but I can't be a priest in your church. And my bishop was also my father-in-law. That's a different talk. But he said, that's all right. That's okay. You don't have to be a priest in the church. But I think that you have some gifts that you could give the church, and I hope you reconsider. But more than that, I think the church has some gifts to give to you, because otherwise you run the risk of creating God in your own image and worshiping yourself. And that really felt true to me, that I would have that tendency. And so when I'm doing this kind of work in the school, it's important to me that I help them to really meet God and not an image of themselves that they then worship. So ritual becomes very important in our school. And I do that with Christian ritual through chapel. In the Episcopal Church, that's what I know, that's what I'm good at. But I also invite them to create their own rituals too. So other students of different faiths can bring in what they do at chapel. They can teach us about their high holy days. They also do daily devotions in their homeroom classes so that they've got a ritual of every morning they're doing something. But most importantly, I ground them. And I'm saying I, and that feels very like, I'm so amazing. So I really mean like the school with sort of my coordination, I guess. Anyways. But service learning is really where it's all about for me. My language is that of the sacraments. A sacrament is an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. And so I tell our kids all the time, this is heresy, that service learning is a sacrament, because it is our outward and visible sign of our inward and spiritual grace. Everything that they are learning about God, everything they're learning about themselves and their relationship with God is then expressed in their service to others. And so we have a very robust service learning program. Every grade has their own program, faculty has their own program, students, individual clubs have their own program, and students are encouraged to come up with their own service projects. We also have one full day of service that everyone comes to. So that also, I think, grounds them and helps them to create a spiritual identity that's outside of themselves. I also wanted to talk about a little bit about relationship. That's another way that I help ground the school. It's not just about the students, it's also about the faculty, and it's also about the parents. And so my job is to reach out to all of those groups. And I do that in several ways. We have a Warrior Wings program, which is just a meal program that are run by a bunch of parents. So anytime there is a death, a loss, a divorce, anything like that, we'll send a meal. We also, I invite parents to my office regularly if I know that something's happening in their lives. And I can tell you it matters when kids know that I'm taking care of their parents too. It really matters. And I'm told I have 1 minute because we shortened a little. So just real quick, I do the same thing for the faculty. I pastor the faculty, I pastor the students, and I pastor the parents. And it's made all the difference. So thank you very much.
Okay. Give me 12 minutes, and I'll give you the world. I was the rabbi, first responder at Sandy Hook, and that was something that nothing prepares you for. Then I retired my pulpit of 26 years, and I am now a prison chaplain. And yeah, I could say this. It's easier to work for a prison than a synagogue. I'm not kidding. So we're talking about culture and changing the culture, and changing the culture of the classroom, changing the culture of the house of worship. So I have a few questions for you. When did our public schools become no-value zones? When did our public classrooms become no-culture zones? And the answer is that in the name of separation of church and state, we have thrown out the entire baby with the bathwater. We are the subject of civics, where you fit into the community, your rights in the community, your responsibilities in the community, you belong in the community, you have pride in the community. We dropped that, by and large. Where are the behavioral expectations, character development, the golden rule? It's not really religion. It's just do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And so I've thought about that, and I put it in a book called Sacred Testimony. And it's my reason, primary reason why I feel we have school shootings all the time, because of probably the single most important factor, the single most place where children are observed the most and taught the most is the school. And so that's the place where culture is made, and that is your golden opportunity to give over the basic foundation that our civilization rests upon. And it's all golden rule stuff. For too long, we have worshipped the golden calf of IQ. We have thrown out the EQ. And the irony is that when you get the EQ right, the IQ works a whole lot better too. And so it is worth the time to do these kinds of exercises. I'm in a totally different frame of mind having done that meditation. The Hindus don't own the breath of life. God bless the Hindus. But the breath of life is for all of us. It is powerful to speak about the long breath. God is patient. The Hebrew word for patience is erech apayim. It really means literally long nose. That could be something to do with our national characteristics. But it's not the appearance of the nose, it's what you do with it. And the nose is the breath. So many times I have inmates that they're in jail, not because they were wrong about that, what they were objecting to, but they were wrong in the manner in which they objected. They went overboard, they hurt someone. They were right about what they were mad about, but they were wrong about how they dealt with it. And this stuff works, folks. I've seen tremendous development in my inmates through the long breath. And one of the stories that I tell them is the Cinderella Man. You ever see the movie, Cinderella Man? Okay, so the Cinderella Man was an Irishman. He knew what he was fighting for. He was older. He was maybe 45, and he had to fight the champ that was stronger and bigger. But he was, he'd get on the inside, and he'd just pound away. And he worked his way up. This was during the Depression. He knew what he was fighting about. I mean, in the Depression, people, they didn't have heating oil or coal, and you'd wake up and a member of your family would be dead because of the exposure to the cold. The Depression was very, very bad, and this story takes place at that time. And so he knew what he was fighting for. And so the evening before the fight, if you saw the movie, they're having the big black tie with all the rich folks, a vent with the white tablecloths. And all of the big honchos that run the boxing are there. And the Cinderella Man's wife comes up to the champ who had killed 2 people in the ring already, previously to this fight, coming up the next day. And he said to her in psychological warfare, "Oh, you're such a fine woman. Too bad you're going to be a widow tomorrow night this time." And she said, "Why? I have never heard of such a thing." And she took her glass of champagne and put it right into the face of the champion. Oh my goodness. He's trying to get his vision back again. Cinderella Man sees it, and he says, "Come on, we're getting out of here." He walks out, and then the champion says, "What? You're going to let your woman do your fighting for you? Cinderella man goes like, ah. And then his wife pinches his arm. He takes a deep breath. He says, yeah, ain't she something? Ain't she something? So what happens in the Chazal, the Talmud says that a person doesn't sin unless a spirit of insanity comes into their spirit. And, you know, it's when you get angry, you actually lose your short-term memory. You can't remember what you just did. Your brains go out of your head when you lose it. And you lose your power and you lose your equilibrium. But at that moment when his wife squeezed his arm and he took the breath, he was able to be in the presence and not feel threatened, not feel pushed, and say, yeah, ain't she something? You know? And we have to be able to do that. Life is going to test you in your family life, your children. They're going to test you. And so don't just be preaching this stuff. It's going to come around a time where it's going to be very hard to do this, and the impulse is going to be there to run out of the house, to whatever your impulse might lead you to. For me, it's running away. And you take that deep breath, keep your brains inside your head, keep your spirit. This happened the other day, and my children, they were so mad at me, and I just said, I'm going to be very quiet because obviously everything that I just did didn't work. So I'm just going to be very quiet now. And they were like, huh? That wasn't a currency that they knew how to deal with. And whatever funk that they were in just immediately turned around. Proverbs, a gentle reply pushes away great wrath. You'll find it in your children, you'll find it in your employment situation, in all of your interpersonal relationships. A gentle reply will push away great wrath. Yeah. Use the energy that's coming to you and move away from it. Let it go where it needs to go. Show the compassion. Education. The way we educate is by motivating and letting children know why it's important to learn these things. So let me tell you about naturalist John George Wood's exhaustive volume, Nature's Teaching, illustrates in great detail that there is scarcely an invention of man that has not its prototype in nature. Benjamin Franklin observed lightning and harnessed the power of electricity. The Wright brothers learned to perfect their flying machine in part by observing the aerodynamics of birds. Einstein discovered the energy contained within subatomic particles and unveiled the secrets of time and space. And more recently, with the discovery of the human genome, a complete blueprint of human DNA was established, setting the stage for exponential breakthroughs in biological sciences. And from that first message sent over the ARPANET from computer science professor Leonard Kleinrock's laboratory at UCLA, the internet became the primary planetary tool of communication. Humankind evolves scientifically and spiritually through the patient, empirical observation of the universe and ourselves. The universe, its wisdom exists in latent form, encrypted in nature, awaiting us to discover it. Wisdom is a maiden that must be courted patiently, but she'll give you the world. And so let the children know the relevance of what they're teaching, what they're learning, what their learning can do for them, what they can achieve. Develop the imagination of children. Einstein said the imagination was the most important thing. The intelligence will follow the imagination. You'll figure out how to accomplish many of the things that you imagine. And so I think as educators going out there in this wonderful gathering here today, we can really pick up many, many insights that we've been very privileged to witness and to take in and practice them. And about my closing statement is that clergy, for too long, have been told to get busy with the dying and not the living. They call you when they're dying, but they don't call you when they want to know how to live. And we have to expand the role of clergy. Im ein ani li mi li, if I'm not for myself, who am I going to be for? If we, the clergy, don't expand our own role in the world just by doing it, nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And if not now, when? Shalom.
I'll come over here because I have notes to read. And I need my glasses. I'm just a person, like I said before. There is no clergy in the Baha'i faith, but we all consider everyone to be capable of seeking truth independently and investigating it. And we all have a responsibility to ourselves and to God to contribute to an ever-advancing civilization. We do have an organization. It is a religion. But it's open to everyone. We believe that all religions are one, and that there are many paths towards the truth. But what I'm here to talk about actually is the educational program that the Baha'i community has been offering at the neighborhood level, because I think it might be interesting to you as educators. I have this very quick story, maybe two. I was in Colombia, actually, in rural Colombia, as a children's class teacher. And I would go visit this one rural community and train mothers in that neighborhood to become children's class teachers. And these classes are about developing the spiritual and intellectual capabilities of young children between the ages of 5 and 10. And this is happening all over the world. And there's prayer, there's singing, there's memorizing, there's service. These children are learning within the context of a community that they are a part of, and they see themselves as active agents of change within that community. And so I was there one week, and this little girl, we always have like an art part of the program, and she was coloring, and we had just memorized this quote, that truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. And without truthfulness, progress and success is impossible for any soul. And they had memorized this, and there was a coloring sheet. And I had to go to the next class. So I always bring the materials with me. This is a very poor community, and they didn't have these materials themselves. So I always bring a box of crayons, but I could tell that she was getting anxiety because she wasn't finished, and she really wanted to do a good job on her coloring sheet. So I said, it's okay, you can keep these colors. And I left, in a hurry to the next class. I come back a week later, and this same little girl comes running up to me, and it looked like she had a present in her hand because there was something in her hand that was wrapped. And she stops, and she opens her hand, and she carefully unwraps the 5 crayons I had left her. And I thought I was never going to see those crayons again. They're just crayons. Who cares? But I realized this little girl taught me a lesson. She taught me the value of material things. She also understood that these crayons were not just for her, but they were for communities of children. She understood the spiritual economy of things, in a sense. And it really profoundly moved me, because I take those things for granted coming from the West with so much privilege. You can just buy your solutions anytime. But this little girl really understood it. in the most destitute of places. But it's not just in rural communities where Baha'is are doing this, or in the poor communities. We had a class in the Upper West Side going on for 2 years. And these kids come from very privileged backgrounds. And we would meet twice a week. The mothers were having a spiritual conversation about parenting. And the kids were with me, and we were studying the same quotes and prayers that the kids from rural Colombia were studying. They were coloring the same worksheets, but their service projects were slightly different. But what happened over a course of 2 years is that these mothers started to create a community of women, of parents, that were actively engaged in the spiritual and material well-being of their children. And as a result, they started to create a system of childcare because they found that that was lacking within their communities. And one of them was telling me after some time that in the Upper West Side, it's so easy to be in your own little brownstone building and you don't know your neighbors very well. You might see them from time to time, but you're kind of alone as a mother. And as a result of coming together and studying these concepts and principles about the spirituality of children, and then the children actively just, exploring these things together, they started to create a community, and this community was diverse. These women were not Baha'i. I was the only Baha'i. They come from different ideologies, different belief systems, but within that diversity, we found unity, and we found our commonalities. And then we found a sense of purpose in the spiritual education of children. We have another program, and it's for junior youth. It's called the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. And we see the same phenomenon happening around the world. These junior youth are learning to develop their powers of expression. They're learning to understand the communities and the context in which they live in and arise to the social needs. Now, one example, in California, there's a group of, I think about 20 youth. They're Mexican American, and a lot of their parents came to the United States illegally and are having a hard time just with basic health care. And these youth have come together on a weekly basis, and they study the writings and the scriptures of various different religious belief systems, as well as the Baha'i writings. And but then they were also really engaged with the community. And one thing they discovered is that their parents didn't have access to health, to doctors. So they went to, they went and talked to a few adults, and they discovered who among those adults that were mentoring them were doctors. And they made a proposal. They said, if we can get one weekend where we have volunteers, nurses and doctors come to a community center and offer their services just for a checkup, we'll organize it, and we're inviting you to come participate in it. These youth came up with that plan on their own. They recognized a real issue, and they arose to play an important role in remedying that, even if it was just for one weekend. So this happened. Another project that another group did in Texas was to create a job fair. This was a community that was really struggling to find work, and these youth went and went to the local grocery stores, went to different offices. They got to know the businesses, the local businesses within that community, and they said, please, we're asking you to come to the community center here, and we would like you to be a part of this job fair. And the intention is that our parents can find work. It's not just a job fair just for the show of it. It's for them to find work. This is important to our families. And this is what these youth did. It's incredible, the power that these youth have. And what's also incredible is that this happened in the neighborhood. And that's the thing that's really interesting, is that it's not just at an institutional level where this spirituality needs to be nurtured within children. It's at the neighborhood level as well. It's at the community level. We all have a responsibility, I believe anyway, for the spiritual well-being of each other, especially of the younger generations. And these junior youth know that are in this program that they're responsible for the spiritual and material well-being of those that are younger than them. So once they graduate from that program, they become the animators of the program themselves, like the leaders. So I just want to share you some principles of the framework that we use, because I think this might be useful to you, maybe, I don't know. But we believe that moral education must develop within the context of a world community that embodies the principle of unity and diversity. Whether we like it or not, we're becoming to recognize the oneness of our humanity through technology or through crisis. We're going to have to recognize that we need to lead lives of cooperation as opposed to competition of interests. Also, a strong sense of purpose, and this is something that was repeated many times in most of these presentations, that these youth need to develop a strong sense of purpose. And we believe that that purpose is embedded within the process of transforming one's own life in the context of contributing to the transformation of society. You cannot transform yourself in isolation from service to others. I cannot go to some mountain and say I'm going to lead a truthful life without actually having to use the muscle of truthfulness in an opportunity to lie. How am I going to develop truthfulness if I have no opportunities to actually have to use that spiritual muscle? And that's the thing with spirituality, when nurturing it, it's a muscle. It's not that you're spiritual one day or you get honesty, you get truthfulness, and then you're done. It's a lifelong process. And in some ways, these children are developing the skills and abilities for a lifelong process of understanding truthfulness, generosity, perseverance, all the other virtues that are out there that I can't list. Another one is that man has been created noble. How much time do I have? 2 minutes, okay. That we have been created noble, and that has also been referenced in the talks before me. And then the other one is that moral education has to re-examine the relationship between man and nature, between man and society, within the family, and even within small groups. And that man's attitude towards life should cease to be one of exploitation, whether of nature or of others, of people. And then another point that I just want to end with is that science and religion are one, and that there are two perspectives. It's like both eyes. So if I'm only studying the sciences and maths, that's how I understand the physical reality of life. But what about the unknown? We have revelation for that. And religion is the system by which we have access to revelation, just how science is the way we have access to understanding our physical reality. In science, we have principles, we have laws. And when we understand these principles and laws, we have the ability to create airplanes and fly, we have the ability to create light. Understanding these principles and laws within math, within the physical reality, it's the same with revelation, with religion. We have spiritual laws and principles, and when we understand those, not in a dogmatic way, but when we understand the essence of spirituality, the essence of our soul, of seeking truth, we can also then find ways to soar in ways we've never seen before as individuals, but as a human body, as a global society. My favorite paradox, I have a minute, so I can share with you my favorite math paradox. It's called Zeno's paradox. How many of you know it? Okay, so Zeno's paradox is where if you can have point A here and point B, and when I bring my hands together, they clap. So the paradox goes like this. If I take just 1/2 step from this point to this point, just 1/2 step, and then I take another 1/2 step, and then another one, I can actually do that an infinite number of times. But do my hands ever meet if I have infinity between these 2 points? I mean, in reality they do, but there's this infinity. Maybe truth is in a similar way. We have truth here, and we have the individuals here. And perhaps a life process is just to get 1 step closer to understanding truth. And we have the bounty of science to help us understand that, and we also have religion to help us understand that. Just take 1/2 step closer. I don't know if we'll ever reach the truth or if we'll ever reach God. But that's the beauty of this paradox. It's an infinite process. Thank you.
Thank you all. I think for time's sake, we'll roll ahead and have this discussion in breakout group. But I invite you to open up the inquiry. Can a spiritual visualization taken from the source of light, can breath, and what if the baby can be brought back in? And what about spiritual activism? And can we find a common meeting place? How can this be brought into a changed culture? Okay, terrific. We'll do our final symposium, and then we'll do breakout group. Thank you all very much.